Hey, creative souls, writers, word witches, thank you for tuning in. My name is Johnny. I am a published fiction writer and a retired adjunct writing professor. For 2 decades, I help college students get their words on the page. Now I teach fiction writing and screenwriting to adults in custody. And I'm new here on YouTube, so if you would please like, share, and subscribe, I would sincerely appreciate it, because the more I can grow this channel, the more I can do in my quest to heal the world through story. Because as I always say, stories can heal the world, so let's do it together. I call myself a word witch, and if you want to know more about what I mean by that, check out my video called On Being a Word Witch. You might also want to check out my video on how the full moon in Capricorn in June 2024. You might also want to check out my video that I just did on the full moon in Capricorn and how we can use it to benefit our writing practices. At the beginning of that, I talk about my Alchemy of Writing membership group that is still going for the founding member price through the month of June. And I won't go into details there, but you can go over to that video and hear what I have to say, learn what it's about. And you can also get my absolutely complimentary Alchemy of Writing, First Steps to Conjure and Nurture Your Writing Practice. And the links for both of those will be over in that video's description. All right, so I thought I would do another video deconstructing and analyzing a short story. This time we're going to look at William Carlos Williams' story called A Use of Force. So if you don't know about Williams, he was a physician. And the protagonist in this story is a physician. And the setup is this. He has been invited to a family's home, and it's during a diphtheria outbreak, and the girl of this family is sick. And, people are dying from this disease, and so her parents are consulting a physician. And someone needs to look at her throat and see if she has it or if she doesn't. So sit back and listen, enjoy the story, and I'll be back when it's over to discuss. The Use of Force by William Carlos Williams. They were new patients to me. All I had was the name, Olson. Please come down as soon as you can. My daughter is very sick. When I arrived, I was met by the mother. A big, startled-looking woman, very clean and apologetic, who merely said, "Is this the doctor?" and let me in. In the back, she added, "You must excuse us, doctor. We have her in the kitchen where it is warm. It is very damp here sometimes." The child was fully dressed and sitting on her father's lap near the kitchen table. He tried to get up, but I motioned for him not to bother, took off my overcoat, and started to look things over. I could see that they were all very nervous, eyeing me up and down distrustfully. As often in such cases, they weren't telling me more than they had to. It was up to me to tell them. That's why they were spending $3 on me. The child was fairly eating me up with her cold, steady eyes, and no expression to her face whatever. She did not move and seemed inwardly quiet, an unusually attractive little thing, and as strong as a heifer in appearance. But her face was flushed and she was breathing rapidly, and I realized that she had a high fever. She had magnificent blonde hair in profusion, one of those picture children often reproduced in advertising leaflets and the photogravure sections of the Sunday papers. "She's had a fever for 3 days," began the father, "and we don't know what it comes from. My wife has given her things, like people do, but it don't do no good. And there's been a lot of sickness around. So we thought you'd better look her over and tell us what is the matter." As doctors often do, I took a trial shot at it as a point of departure. "Has she had a sore throat?" Both parents answered me together. No, she says her throat doesn't hurt her." "Does your throat hurt you?" added the mother to the child. But the little girl's expression didn't change, nor did she move her eyes from my face. "Have you looked?" "I tried to," said the mother, "but I couldn't see." As it happens, we had been having a number of cases of diphtheria in the school to which this child went during that month, and we were all quite apparently thinking of that, though no one had as yet spoken of the thing. "Well," I said, "suppose we take a look at the throat first." I smiled in my best professional manner, and asking for the child's first name, I said, "Come on, Matilda, open your mouth, and let's take a look at your throat." Nothing doing. "Aw, come on," I coaxed. "Just open your mouth wide and let me take a look." "Look," I said, opening both hands wide. "I haven't anything in my hands. Just open up and let me see." "Such a nice man," put in the mother. "Look how kind he is to you. Come on, do what he tells you. He won't hurt you." At that, I ground my teeth in disgust. If only they wouldn't use the word hurt, I might be able to get somewhere. But I did not allow myself to be hurried or disturbed, but speaking quietly and slowly, I approached the child again. As I moved my chair a little nearer, suddenly, with one cat-like movement, both her hands clawed instinctively for my eyes, and she almost reached them too. In fact, she knocked my glasses flying, and they fell, though unbroken, several feet away from me on the kitchen floor. Both the mother and father almost turned themselves inside out in embarrassment and apology. "You bad girl," said the mother, taking her and shaking her by one arm. "Look what you've done. The nice man." "For heaven's sake," I broke in, "don't call me a nice man to her. I'm here to look at her throat on the chance that she might have diphtheria and possibly die of it. But that's nothing to her. Look here," I said to the child. "We're going to look at your throat. They're old enough to understand what I'm saying. Will you open it up now by yourself, or shall we have to open it for you?" Not a move. Even her expression hadn't changed. Her breaths, however, were coming faster and faster. Then the battle began. I had to do it. I had to have a throat culture for her own protection. But first I told the parents that it was entirely up to them. I explained the danger, but said that I would not insist on a throat examination so long as they would take the responsibility. "If you don't do what the doctor says, you'll have to go to the hospital," the mother admonished her severely. "Oh yeah?" I had to smile to myself. After all, I had already fallen in love with a savage brat. The parents were contemptible to me. In the ensuing struggle, they grew more and more abject, crushed, exhausted, while she surely rose to magnificent heights of insane fury, of effort bred of her terror of me. The father tried his best, and he was a big man, but the fact that she was his daughter, his shame at her behavior and his dread of hurting her, made him release her just at the critical times when I had almost achieved success, till I wanted to kill him. But his dread also that she might have diphtheria made him tell me to go on, though he himself was almost fainting, while the mother moved back and forth behind us, raising and lowering her hands in an agony of apprehension. "Put her in front of you on your lap," I ordered, "and hold both her wrists." As soon as he did, the child let out a scream. "Don't! You're hurting me! Let go of my hands! Let them go, I tell you!" Then she shrieked, terrifyingly, hysterically, "Stop it! Stop it! You're killing me!" "Do you think she can stand it, doctor?" said the mother. "You get out," said the husband to his wife. "Do you want her to die of diphtheria?" "Come on now, hold her," I said. Then I grasped the child's head with my left hand and tried to get the wooden tongue depressor between her teeth. She fought, with clenched teeth, desperately. But now I also had grown furious, at a child. I tried to hold myself down, but I couldn't. I know how to expose a throat for inspection, and I did my best. When finally I got the wooden spatula between the last teeth and just the point of it into the mouth cavity, she opened up for an instant, but before I could see anything, she came down again, and gripping the wooden blade between her molars, she reduced it to splinters before I could get it out again. "Aren't you ashamed?" the mother yelled at her. "Aren't you ashamed to act like that in front of the doctor?" "Get me a smooth-handled spoon of some sort," I told the mother. "We're going through with this." The child's mouth was already bleeding. Her tongue was cut, and she was screaming in wild, hysterical shrieks. Perhaps I should have desisted and come back in an hour or more. No doubt it would have been better. But I had seen at least 2 children lying dead in bed of neglect in such cases, and feeling that I must get a diagnosis now or never, I went at it again. But the worst of it was that I, too, had got beyond reason. I could have torn the child apart in my own fury and enjoyed it. It was a pleasure to attack her. My face was burning with it. The damned little brat must be protected against her own idiocy, one says to oneself at such times. Others might be protected against her. It is a social necessity, and all these things are true. But a blind fury, a feeling of adult shame, bred of a longing for muscular release are the operatives. One goes on to the end. In a final unreasoning assault, I overpowered the child's neck and jaws. I forced the heavy silver spoon back of her teeth and down her throat till she gagged. And there it was, both tonsils covered with membrane. She had fought valiantly to keep me from knowing her secret. She had been hiding that sore throat for 3 days, at least, and lying to her parents in order to escape just such an outcome as this. Now truly she was furious. She had been on the defensive before, but now she attacked, tried to get off her father's lap and fly at me while tears of defeat blinded her eyes. Okay, so first thing, we don't generally think about an innocent child as being an antagonist in a story, but of course it all depends on who the protagonist is, right? In this case, it's the doctor, and this story, it's a very close first-person account of his experience. So he enters the family home. They don't know each other. They're not familiar with each other. And as I said in the intro, this is during a diphtheria outbreak, and the girl is sick, and so obviously her parents are concerned, right? But notice how she's characterized. He writes about her cold, steady gaze, right? So that right there, he's already setting it up. He's depicting her as this kind of harsh character. And of course, we can think of her as she's sick, she's probably afraid. We can empathize with her, but from the standpoint of who's the protagonist, in this case, she has a cold, steady gaze, and that tips us off that she's not going to be super compliant, perhaps. Then the inciting incident of the story is when she lunges at the doctor, and that bit about trying to scratch his eyes out or claw his eyes out. And so this is when we know that a war of sorts is on. And did you notice how the doctor plays to the fears of the parents to try and get them on his side to, kind of hogtie this child so he can do what he's there to do? And the mother, who is, we can perhaps guess that she may feel a little shame about the way her child's behaving, and she is probably afraid as well because people are dying from this disease. She then shames her daughter to try and get her to do what the doctor wants her to do. And did you notice also the verbs that are used? So we can do a lot in terms of setting tone in a story by the actual verbs that we use. One word, and then a few of those words put together can really set a tone. So words like grasp, fought, clenched, overpowered, forced, gagged, those are all super harsh words. And so it really does go a long way to create this tone in this story that is not pleasant at all. And the doctor admits, right, that he kind of loses his professional demeanor and he just finds himself in this blind fury. I get the impression anyway that he knows that he has kind of gone beyond reason with his anger. And so as I mentioned just a little bit ago, it's very easy for me to align with the child in this case because I've been a child, and as with all of us, I bet all of us can relate to this and think back to a time when we were kids and had to undergo some kind of medical treatment of some sort that was very scary. And maybe even we fought. I remember fighting. I think a lot of us have had that experience. And also if we have kids, we've been in that situation where our child is terrified, yet they need this help. At some point, it just has to be done. And the way it gets done can be really critical to the child's experience. In this case, she is the antagonist to the protagonist, the doctor. She's also a terrified, sick child. And so it's very easy to see this as an assault on her. And it's a very hard story to read. At least it is for me. But if we take a critical eye to this story and keep remembering the doctor's the protagonist, what do we learn about him? What does this encounter that he has with the child cost him? What do you think he loses? Does he lose something in this process? It seems to me that it's his professional pride, because he knows, it seems to me anyway, he knows that he has crossed a line, at least with his emotions, and I think also with his actions, although that may be debatable. We will get to that. So there is that fine line, like I was saying, when a kid needs something, but they're terrified and they're fighting, what do we do about it? How do we approach it? How do we deal with it? To me, this story also is about the limitations around consent. So we hear a lot these days about consent, but are there limits to that? Especially in this case, again, when it comes to a child whose life may be in danger. how much consent do we give that child before we just say, no, we have to do this. We have to see if you are sick. And in the end, he did discover that the child had diphtheria. So the two things that really were in conflict with each other were the doctor's professional pride and the child's terror and defiance. So I have questions for you about this. Did he do what he had to do to get a diagnosis and save the girl, or did he abuse his power? And where do you draw the line with that? And when do we embrace the limitations of consent when it comes to the health and well-being of a child? I would love to know your thoughts on this. I don't think this is an easy story to land on one side or the other, and I think that's what makes it such a remarkable story, is it really complicates these two characters and what they bring to the table. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed, if you can call it that, the story. As always, sending you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.